here's the issue. I turn on my bike, I'm going, temp gauge goes off. Not the most ideal thing that could happen. Basically, what the issue is right now is my water pump had a little bit of a leak. So I took it to the shop, and they're like, oh yeah, it's just an O-ring. You know, I took it in the shop, I didn't have a lot of time to fix it myself and figure it out. They just said it was an O-ring, they replaced it, everything seemed cool. So now, try not to let it idle too long. I have this whole thing of coolant because they only had the gallon that I have to fit in my freaking jacket. And we're gonna try to ride home. I know night vlogs aren't ideal, but this is just like a survival situation, kinda, if you will, where I gotta get home, and I'm about, I want to say 30 miles out, which probably isn't the most ideal situation, but it is what it is. So I'm just gonna keep this thing in really low RPMs, and apparently, according to my dad, who's Mr. Mechanic, said that if it's in a low gear or in a high gear and the engine has some more tension on it and it starts lugging and making a pinging noise, it said try to listen for a pinging noise. I guess that's the tell sign of it having too low of coolant. So right now I have a gallon of coolant in my jacket pressed against my stomach like a freaking baby, and I don't have time to let my bike cool down. I don't have time to let my bike idle. Let's just try to make it home safe. When your bike's just sitting there, not collecting any cold air, that can be an issue. So you're not, you know, you gotta stay moving. I gotta keep my engine cool. And I don't know, man. I'm pretty mad. You know, I took my bike in for a really simple fix, and it comes out with a different issue that I don't know how to fix. It's beyond my knowledge. There doesn't seem to be a lot of forums or videos on a DRZ overheating. So I'm making this vlog to show you guys just logical things you could do to keep your bike from seizing up, man, because the last thing I want is for my piston to get welded to the cylinder. So I'm at low RPMs. I'm trying to just make it lug a little, and I don't hear any pinging. But there is one thing that I read that actually does make sense. One thing that you should note is that there's a reservoir on your DRZ, and it's an overflow. It looks like it always has condensation in it, and it's because there's hot coolant going in it. But basically, there's an overflow for all of your coolant to go when the coolant expands, and there's no place for it to go. So instead of expelling it from the, you know, from the whole radiator and everything, it what it does is it shoots it into that reservoir. You know, when you turn off your bike, if your bike gets really hot, your fan will turn on, your radiator fan will turn on, and what it'll do is you'll see the coolant in the reservoir that builds up, you'll see it get sucked back into the radiator. But one thing I noticed that was different about my bike is that the coolant seemed to be very high after I rode it, meaning it got very hot to where I needed to chill on it, you know. It got very hot to where it filled it up so much to where I actually noticed it, and I was like, wow, that's kind of an issue. And I'm just getting on it a little bit just to see how it's feeling, you know. If I feel any power loss, if I get any engine lock, dude, that is the last thing I need right now. It's my engine to lock up. I have a gallon of coolant in my stomach underneath my jacket right now. Feels like I'm carrying a baby, bro. So why don't we blink and have it move forward, you know, another 30 minutes. answer the phone, babe. I'm sorry. Alright, man. Of course the shit doesn't want to come on whenever I have the camera on, but I swear, dude, that light's gonna go off. Just wait. Just wait. Oh. Take this coolant thing out of my stomach. Ah, you bastard. I know you're gonna. Yep. There we go. There we go. There you have it, man. There is the overheating light. Something you never want to see on your bike. And it's the oddest thing because it's only happening whenever I idle. I don't understand that.
I'm gonna figure out this issue, but it's a pain in the ass, man. You know, I'm gonna fix my bike and try, but this is a reality you have to face. So, anyways, guys, until next time, we'll make a little troubleshooting series, if you will.
All right, guys. So I'm back at my garage, and this is kind of fast forwarding a few days after the coolant issue with my bike. Anyways, guys, so what happened with my DRZ? Just to recap. So at idle, my DRZ would have an issue. Here, let me pull up my key. At idle, my DRZ would have an issue with this light right here. Now, what would happen is, when you're idling, you gotta remember that you're not having any airflow going to your radiator. And this is, you know, that's a big issue, because when you're not having that airflow of like being on a highway or something, it really does drastically heat your bike up a little bit. Now, this coolant light, well, this is more of a temperature gauge. It has nothing to do with your coolant. It won't tell you how much coolant you have. You just have to know that when this gets set off, that's because your engine temperature is hitting too high of a point where it's saying, hey, you need to let your bike cool down. So the way that I fixed this was I took it to my mechanic at Axis Motorsports. And, you know, I always give them props because they worked on my two-stroke and, you know, resolved any bike problems I had. And they, what happened was, the main reason why I took him to work on my bike in the first place was because I noticed that there was a little bit of coolant, and maybe you could see some residue. Yeah, if you could see the residue right here. I cleaned it up a little bit, and that's why you can't see anything, but this is your water pump right here. And this is having a flow of coolant go to your water pump and ultimately cool your whole engine. So there's a seal in here that went bad, and it was slowly trickling some coolant down all the way into my skid plate. And I obviously don't want that to happen, because if you're leaking coolant, you can seize up your bike if enough coolant leaks out of your radiator. So I took them to just replace the seal on that, and they did a great job, but then I had the issue with the overheating. And that left me kind of frustrated at first, because I was like, you know what, man, like, you know, why would I take my bike here if a new problem comes out of it? But instead, I just hit them up. I said, hey, this is happening with my bike. They took my bike back in instantly and said, sorry about that issue. Let's see what we can do. In about 15 minutes, they told me, they were like, oh, is your radiator making like a gurgling noise kind of? I was like, yeah, it actually did. So that's one thing I noticed when I turned off my bike. It sounded like your radiator had like all this pressure or something in it. And it just sounded like all the fluids were kind of mixing around, like your stomach when it growls, if you will. And the guy Tyler there, he's like the main mechanic, really cool dude, just explained it to me, and he said
He said, so that gurgling is an air bubble in your radiator. And he said, so the way to get rid of that, well, the issue, let me explain why that's an issue. The issue of having a bubble in your radiator when it comes to topping off the coolant and whatnot, when you have that bubble, it allows more heat to transfer because there's that gap of air inside your radiator. So on top of the radiator, on the other side, if you see that little nut on top right there, if you use that to release that bubble, then it gets rid of that issue and there's a constant flow of coolant without having that gurgling noise. So that resolved that issue, and you know, I was honestly, I'll be completely honest with you guys, I was very terrified that, you know, I had some major issue with my bike, but without freaking out, the best thing to always do is just look at cockpit air, meaning like, are you making a mistake that can cause this issue? And there was nothing I could do at that point because it had to do with the cooling. And I took it to the mechanic. So, but if you guys ever work on it, just make sure that you tidy up everything well and think of everything that you did to the bike. So they obviously topped off with coolant, but it created that bubble, which also created the overheating. You see what I mean with this chain reaction of things where one small thing can create a larger issue? Point being, the bike is okay, everything's cool. At idle, it doesn't overheat, it gets a little hotter, but that's just regular for this bike. So we resolved the issue, guys, and I'm super stoked about that because I don't want anything wrong with my bike. You know, these things are deemed to be very reliable, so I'm gonna hold it to its title. But I'm gonna have more videos for you guys up and coming. I'm gonna get a Cena headset, maybe do a review on that. I'm saving up to get rid of this horrendous fender, you know, this whole fender part. I'm gonna get rid of it. I need to get rid of that. If you guys enjoyed this video and, you know, enjoyed just the knowledge of, you know, what to do in certain situations like that, go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you don't mind. Anyways, guys, this is SoCal Moto and Christian Hamilton, and I'll see you guys next time.